I have been having a blast playing this game so far, but here are 5 things I think you should know before starting to play Roots of Pacha. I also will caution just a slight spoiler alert because I am going to be revealing some of the gameplay elements and mechanics in the game, so if you're wanting to be totally surprised, just be aware that this might talk about some of the things you're going to come across in the game. And as always, if you're enjoying the Roots of Pacha videos or my other stuff, make sure to like and subscribe. Number one, first and foremost, this game is constantly compared to Stardew Valley because truly that is the benchmark game in this genre. And what I want to tell you is, yes, there's a lot of the same gameplay loops that you can get from Stardew Valley in this game, which is awesome, but there is a much different progression and a much different vibe to it. So if you're expecting exactly Stardew Valley, just in a little bit of a different setting, then you might need to adjust your expectations because this game has a little bit of a different feel to it, and I really do think this game stands on its own. It doesn't seem like it's trying to be Stardew Valley, but it still gives you the same things that you look for in this genre. Even myself, I was so hesitant to play Stardew because I was so attached to Harvest Moon 64 that it took me a long time to even play Stardew Valley, and now I have like 800 hours logged. So now that the genre is expanding, I think it's easier to not be so attached to that one and first farming game that you've played. There is, of course, a really big focus on farming crops and taking care of animals, so that is definitely something that is very similar, but how you progress and get the crops is much different. Taking care of the animals is a lot more similar to Stardew Valley than even the crops really, but you get access to animals almost right away, so that's kind of exciting. The second thing I think you should know is about the NPC quests, and in this game they're called ideas. So most of the quests involve gathering materials and giving them to the specified NPC, and it will unlock something that is very helpful for the village. Now, in some games, the NPC quests are very sidelined, like you don't really have to complete them right away, but I'm gonna give you an example of what happened to me. So I had a quest with Terror, and basically what you get from that quest in the end is a press, which you can use to make oil. Now, in the meantime, I got another quest where my animal got sick, and you get some recipes from Ada to heal these animals, but it requires oil. And so I just assumed because you had that quest, you could have access to oil somehow, and I was having a really hard time figuring it out, and then I realized that I needed to complete this other quest that I was putting off because I just didn't have the right ingredients. So just be aware that you kind of do need to keep going with all the quests to keep progressing the storyline, or else mechanics in the game such as animal sickness might unlock and you are not actually prepared to deal with that quite yet. So it's just something interesting to note. Now, there is a Patchatree in one of the areas on the map, and it has a bunch of quests attached to it, and that brings me to number 3. So one thing that you should be prepared for is for these quests that you complete to restore this Patchatree. I'm actually not far enough to know if that's for sure what happens, but I'm assuming that it's not really clear cut. And I'm going to use one more Stardew Valley comparison. The community center, you kind of know exactly what you needed to complete it. In this one, it gives you hints, but there's a little bit more puzzle solving to it. And so if you really like, figuring things out and piecing it together, you might really enjoy that. But if you're looking for something more straightforward, that might be something that you find a little bit irritating because you don't really know how to complete each section of the tree. And then speaking of puzzles, this is something I've really been enjoying in the game, but you better put your puzzle hat on because in the caves, there are a lot of puzzles and mazes to complete, and I personally love it. I've been having a blast, but just be aware that you are going to have to put your thinking cap on, and one of the most interesting puzzles that you can kind of see a preview of here This one took me a while to complete, but it was so satisfying, and you did get a very worthwhile prize for it, so it gave me a little bit of a different vibe of other cozy farm sim games that I played, because now there's this element of puzzle solving. So I think that's something that you should definitely be prepared for, but also very excited about. Okay, and the last thing I want to give you some insight on before you dive into this game is that yes, your resources are always going to be limited on a game like this at the start, but there's so many free ways to get crops and food and items that you can consume that don't be afraid to eat some of your crops to keep you going throughout the days, especially early. You want to maximize your time so you can clear the farming area so that you can gather resources, because you are going to need a lot. And so I think what I wanted to make sure that you knew going into this game is it's okay to eat some of your crops while you're out foraging or in the mines, because you definitely will not run out of money. I have yet to have, other than the really expensive things that I've come across so far, I've yet to come across something that I've wanted to get in the game that I have absolutely not been able to afford. So as long as you're working every day to try to make some profits and contributions, you're gonna be okay. So I hope this gave you a little bit insight to the game, whether you have just started playing and you wanted some tips to look forward to, or you weren't sure if you're going to buy this game and this gave you a little bit more insight on what all the game's about. I hope it was helpful. I will be doing a review once I get a little bit further into the game of all my pros and cons about the game. So if you're looking for a definitive, like, should I buy this or not, this is not that. I think it's just to kind of give you a recap of what you could expect. But I hope this gives you a start, and we'll see you at the next video.